My name is Eleanor. I'm 67 years old. And I never thought my Sunday family dinner would end with my son Marcus pushing me against the wall. All because I refused to buy an $870,000 house for him and his wife Brianna. After my husband Robert passed away 5 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be financially comfortable. But that night, as tears streamed down my face in the empty dining room, I made a decision that would change our family forever. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Is your family home a place of peace or conflict? Please hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to make tough choices about family and money. I spent 40 years teaching 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary here in Westfield. For decades of shaping young minds while living a modest lifestyle. My husband Robert and I never believed in flashy displays of wealth, despite the fact that his career as an investment banker left us quite comfortable. Money is a tool, not a trophy, Robert would always say. We saved, invested wisely, and planned for a future where we could help our children if they truly needed it. Robert and I shared 45 beautiful years together before cancer took him from us 5 years ago. He was my rock, my partner in everything. He handled our finances with precision and care, making sure I would be taken care of if anything happened to him. And something did happen far too soon. The cancer moved quickly, and within 6 months of diagnosis, I was a widow. But Robert's careful planning meant I didn't have financial worries on top of my grief. Our son Marcus was once the sweetest little boy you could imagine. He had his father's analytical mind and my compassionate heart. As a child, he would save his allowance to buy small gifts for his sister or me. I remember when he was 9, he spent an entire month saving to buy me a ceramic flower pot he saw me admiring in a store window. That was the Marcus I raised, thoughtful and considerate. My daughter Audrey, now 38, has always been the steady one. She married her college sweetheart Bradley, and they've given me 3 wonderful grandchildren. Sophia, age 12, Nathan, age 9, and little Emma, just 4 years old. Audrey works as a pediatric nurse, and despite her busy schedule, she calls me every other day just to check in. I still live in the 4-bedroom colonial where we raised our children. It's too big for just me, but every corner holds memories I can't bear to part with. The height marks on the kitchen doorframe tracking Marcus and Audrey's growth. The dent in the living room wall from when Marcus was learning to ride his skateboard indoors against our rules. The garden Robert and I planted together that I still tend each spring. This house isn't just a structure. It's the physical embodiment of our family history. Marcus met Brianna 12 years ago at a friend's wedding. He was 30 at the time, established in his career as a software developer, and had just bought his first condo. Brianna worked in pharmaceutical sales. A pretty brunette with a sharp wit and ambitious outlook. I remember thinking she seemed a bit materialistic at our first meeting, commenting on the brand of my purse and asking pointed questions about Robert's job. But Marcus was smitten, and I was happy to see him happy. The warning signs appeared gradually. First, it was Brianna upgrading Marcus's wardrobe, throwing out the comfortable clothes he'd always worn in favor of designer labels. Then came the new car, much more expensive than what Marcus would have chosen for himself. Small changes that didn't seem significant in isolation, but together painted a picture of someone slowly reshaping my son. Their wedding was the first major display of Brianna's expectations. What started as a modest ceremony with 100 guests somehow ballooned into an extravagant affair with 300 people, many of whom Marcus barely knew. Robert and I had offered to contribute $20,000, a generous sum we thought would cover a lovely celebration. Brianna managed to spend nearly triple that amount, with Marcus sheepishly asking us to cover the difference because Brianna deserved her dream wedding. Robert was hesitant, but we ultimately agreed. It's a one-time expense, he reasoned, and if it starts their marriage on the right foot, it's worth it. I wish I had recognized then that it wasn't a one-time expense, but the beginning of a pattern. After the wedding, Brianna decided their condo wasn't adequate. They needed a house in a better neighborhood, with more space for entertaining and the children they planned to have. Again, Marcus came to us for help with the down payment. Robert was still alive then, and he sat Marcus down for a serious talk about financial responsibility. We agreed to contribute $30,000, but with the understanding that this was the last major financial gift. Marcus agreed readily, though Brianna's smile seemed strained when she heard the terms. The house they bought was lovely. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, in a good neighborhood with excellent schools. It needed some cosmetic updates but was perfectly livable. Within 6 months, Brianna had convinced Marcus they needed to renovate the kitchen and master bathroom, projects that cost well over $60,000. They took out a home equity loan, beginning a cycle of debt that would continue to grow. Over the years, I watched as Brianna's demands escalated and Marcus's resistance diminished. The annual vacations to exotic locations. The luxury SUV when their sedan was only 3 years old. The country club membership they couldn't really afford. With each new acquisition, Marcus seemed less like the son I raised and more like someone desperate to keep his wife happy at any cost. I tried to maintain family harmony, biting my tongue when Brianna made snide comments about my outdated home or clothes. I focused on being a good grandmother to the 2 children they eventually had, Liam and Grace, now ages 7 and 5. I invited them for weekly Sunday dinners, a tradition Robert had always valued, and one I was determined to continue after his death. But the tension kept building. Brianna would forget to bring the children for visits. Marcus would cancel plans at the last minute, always with a reasonable-sounding excuse that I suspected came from Brianna. I noticed how he would check his phone when she texted, immediately jumping to meet whatever demand she had made. My strong, independent son had become someone I barely recognized. Last Sunday began like any other family dinner day. I woke up early, excited to have everyone gathered around my table. The menu was Marcus's favorite: pot roast with roasted potatoes and carrots, homemade rolls, and apple pie for dessert. I spent hours in the kitchen taking care with each dish, wanting everything to be perfect. Audrey and her family arrived first, right on time at 4 o'clock. Bradley carried a bottle of wine and a bouquet of daisies, my favorite. Sophia immediately offered to help set the table. While Nathan and Emma headed for the toy box, I kept stocked in the corner of the living room. Audrey hugged me tight, whispering, "Everything smells amazing, Mom." Marcus and Brianna were supposed to arrive at 4, but by 4:30, they still hadn't shown up. I tried not to let my disappointment show as I offered Audrey and Bradley some appetizers while we waited. Finally, at 4:45, the doorbell rang. Marcus looked stressed, his smile tight as he kissed my cheek. Brianna didn't bother with a greeting, instead launching into a complaint about traffic and how my neighborhood was inconveniently located. "Sorry we're late, Mom," Marcus said, handing me a bottle of wine that I recognized as one from a case I'd given him for Christmas. Brianna had to finish getting ready. Brianna rolled her eyes. "It's not my fault. The contractor was supposed to finish the guest bathroom remodel yesterday, but of course they're behind schedule. I had to use the hall bathroom to get ready, and you know how small that is." I bit back a comment about their small hall bathroom being larger than my master bath, and instead ushered everyone to the table. The children's chatter filled the awkward silence as we all took our seats. I served the food, heartwarming as Nathan declared it, "The best roast ever, Grandma." Conversation flowed more easily once we were eating. Audrey talked about a challenging case at the hospital, and Bradley shared news about a promotion at his accounting firm. Sophia proudly described her science project that had won first place, while Marcus discussed a new project at work. Brianna remained mostly silent, picking at her food and frequently checking her phone beneath the table. Eventually, as always happens, the conversation turned to the children's activities. Audrey mentioned that Sophia was starting horseback riding lessons, something she'd been begging for since she was little. "We found a really reasonable stable about 20 minutes away," Bradley explained. "The instructor has been teaching kids for 30 years and has an excellent safety record." Brianna suddenly perked up. "Our Liam has been asking for tennis lessons. The coach at the country club says he has natural talent. Of course, the private lessons are expensive, but we want to nurture his abilities." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "It's important to support their interests. It would be easier if we had a proper house in a better neighborhood," Brianna said with a pointed look at me. "The country club is a 30-minute drive from our place." Before I could respond, Marcus cleared his throat loudly, putting down his fork with a clatter that silenced all other conversation. His face had that determined look I recognized from when he was a stubborn toddler. "Mom, we need to talk about something important," he announced. The table fell silent. Brianna and I have found the perfect house. It's in Lakeside Estates, close to the country club, with plenty of room for the kids to grow, and for us to entertain properly. I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. That sounds nice, dear. Are you thinking of selling your current house? Obviously, Brianna interjected with a little laugh. But the housing market isn't great right now, and we'd take a loss if we sold. Plus, the new house is $870,000. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. That was an enormous sum. More than triple what their current house was worth. Before I could form a response, Marcus continued. So we've been thinking, he said, glancing at Brianna, who nodded encouragingly. You're all alone in this big house, Mom. You've got all that money just sitting there from Dad's life insurance and investments. It doesn't make sense. I carefully set down my fork. What exactly are you asking, Marcus? We want you to buy us the house, he said bluntly. You could sell this place, buy something smaller for yourself, and use the rest to get us the house in Lakeside. It's a good investment. The table went completely silent. Even the children seemed to sense the tension, their usual chatter silenced. I stared at my son, searching for some sign that this was a joke, but his expression remained deadly serious. Marcus, I finally said, keeping my voice calm, I don't think that would be appropriate. Your father and I worked very hard for many years to build our savings. That money is for my retirement and eventually, to be divided between you and Audrey when I'm gone. Brianna made a scoffing sound. Why wait until you're gone? We need it now when the kids are young and can benefit from living in a better neighborhood with better schools. Your children attend the same schools Audrey and Marcus went to, I pointed out. They're excellent schools. That was 20 years ago, Brianna snapped. Things change. Marcus's face was growing red, a sign of his building anger. Mom, you're being selfish. Dad would have wanted to help us. You're just sitting on all that money while we're struggling to give our kids the best opportunities. Audrey finally broke her shocked silence. Marcus, that's enough. Mom and Dad have always been generous. They helped both of us with down payments, paid for our weddings. Stay out of this, Audrey, Marcus snapped. It's different for you. Bradley's parents gave them a gift when they bought their house. They've always helped with the kids' expenses. Mom has barely contributed to our children's futures. That hurt. I had set up college funds for all 5 grandchildren, contributing the same amount to each. I babysit regularly, buy clothes and toys, and am as involved as Brianna will allow me to be. That's not fair, Marcus, I said, my voice finally showing my distress. I love all my grandchildren equally, and I've tried to be fair with my financial help. Fair. Marcus stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Fair would be recognizing that we need more help than Audrey and Bradley. Fair would be selling this ridiculous house that's too big for one person, and using the money to help your son provide for his family. The children were wide-eyed now. Little Emma began to cry, and Bradley quickly excused himself to take her to the living room. Sophia and Nathan followed, leaving just the adults at the tension-filled table. Marcus, please calm down, I pleaded. We can discuss this rationally. We've been trying to discuss this rationally for years, he shouted. My wife is sick of living in a cramped house while you rattle around in this mausoleum. Buy her a fancy new house. Buy us a new house. Audrey stood now too. Marcus, stop it. You're behaving horribly. Mom doesn't owe you a house. Of course you'd take her side, Marcus sneered. You've always been the favorite. That's not true, I protested, standing as well. I've never played favorites. Then prove it, Marcus demanded, stepping toward me. Sell this place. Buy us the house. Show us that you care about our happiness. I can't do that, I said firmly. And I think you need to leave until you can speak to me with respect. What happened next still feels surreal. Marcus's face contorted with rage, and he stepped even closer. You selfish old woman, he hissed. Dad would be ashamed of you. When I didn't respond, just stood my ground with tears welling in my eyes, he put both hands on my shoulders and shoved me backward. I stumbled, hitting the wall behind me with enough force to knock down a framed family photo. The glass shattered on the hardwood floor. The sound seemed to break the spell. Marcus looked at his hands in horror, then at me pressed against the wall, tears now flowing freely down my cheeks. Mom, he began, but Brianna was already grabbing her purse. Let's go, Marcus, she said coldly. She's made her choice. Marcus hesitated for just a moment, conflict clear on his face, before following his wife out the front door. They didn't even say goodbye to their children, who were huddled with their cousins in the living room, frightened by the shouting. After they left, Audrey helped me to a chair, her arm around my shoulders. Are you okay, Mom? Should we call the police? The thought of calling the police on my own son was too much to bear. No, iwisparat. No police. Just give me a minute. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Audrey and Bradley cleaned up the broken glass and food, while I tried to reassure the children that everything was okay. When they finally left, promising to check on me the next day, I was left alone in the suddenly too quiet house, trying to process what had happened. My son had put his hands on me in anger. My son had demanded I sell the home where he grew up. My son had become someone I didn't recognize. After everyone left, the silence in the house was deafening. I wandered from room to room, replaying the scene at dinner over and over in my mind. The look of rage on Marcus's face. The feeling of my back hitting the wall. The sound of breaking glass. How had we come to this? I found myself in Marcus's old bedroom, now a guest room but still containing a bookshelf with his childhood trophies and a few favorite books he couldn't bear to take when he moved out. I picked up the baseball he'd caught at his first professional game, a treasured memento from a day when Robert had surprised us with tickets for Marcus's 10th birthday. Robert, what would he have done in this situation? He'd always been better at handling Marcus's occasional outbursts as a teenager. Pick your battles, he would tell me, but never cave on matters of principle. Was this a matter of principle? Or was I being stubborn, holding on to money that could make my son's life better? I sank onto the edge of the bed, baseball still in hand, and let the memories wash over me. I remembered the day Marcus was born. The overwhelming love I felt when they placed that tiny bundle in my arms. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike, bandaging scraped knees, and cheering at every baseball game and science fair. I remembered his high school graduation, the pride bursting in my chest as he gave the valedictorian speech. I remembered helping him move into his college dorm, trying not to cry as we drove away, leaving our boy to become a man. And I remembered the first time I noticed a change after he met Brianna. The canceled lunch date because Brianna wanted to check out a new furniture store. The Christmas he seemed uncomfortable with our traditional family pajamas because Brianna thinks they're childish. The gradual pulling away, justified by being busy or tired, but always somehow connected to Brianna's preferences. I pulled out a family album from the bookshelf, flipping through pages of Marcus growing up. There he was, gap-toothed and beaming in his little league uniform. There he was, lanky and awkward at 13, arms slung around his sister's shoulders. There he was at 18, so handsome in his graduation gown, the world at his feet. And there he was at 30, standing beside Brianna in their wedding photos, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Had I missed something? Had I failed him as a mother? The questions circled in my mind as tears blurred the photos before me. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was my sister Patricia calling for our weekly chat. When she heard my tearful voice, she demanded to know what was wrong. The whole story poured out of me. He pushed you. Patricia's voice was incredulous. Your own son put his hands on you in anger? He didn't mean it. I found myself defending him even now. He was just upset. Eleanor, listen to yourself, Patricia said firmly. Would you accept that excuse from one of your third graders? He hit her because he was upset. No, you wouldn't. And you shouldn't accept it from your 42-year-old son either. Deep down I knew she was right. No amount of anger justified physical aggression. But this was my son, my little boy. What do I do, Pat? I asked, voice breaking. I can't buy them that house. It would be almost my entire liquid savings, and what then? What about the next demand? But if I refuse, I might lose him forever. You might lose him either way, Patricia said gently. If you give in, you're teaching him that he can treat you this way and still get what he wants. Is that the relationship you want with your son? We talked for nearly an hour, my wise older sister letting me work through my thoughts and feelings. By the time we hung up, I still didn't have a clear answer, but I felt less alone. Sleep was impossible. I made a cup of chamomile tea and settled into Robert's old leather recliner in the den. It still smelled faintly of his aftershave if I pressed my face against the headrest. "What would you do, Robert?" I whispered into the empty room. As I sat there, more memories surfaced. The time Marcus wanted a gaming system that all his friends had, and Robert made him earn half the money doing chores before we would purchase it. The summer Marcus wanted to quit his lifeguard job because it was too much work, and Robert firmly but kindly explained the importance of honoring commitments. The countless small lessons in responsibility and respect that Robert had imparted to our son. What had happened to those lessons? When had Marcus decided that he was entitled to my money, to the point of demanding it over a family dinner? When had his wants become more important than basic respect for his mother? I thought about all the times I'd helped Marcus and Brianna already. The wedding we largely paid for. The down payment on their current house. The loans over the years that were never repaid, always with a good reason why they couldn't manage it just yet. The expensive Christmas and birthday gifts that were received with thanks but also hints about what they'd prefer next time. I thought about Audrey and Bradley, who worked hard, lived within their means, and expressed genuine gratitude for any help offered. Who had never once demanded anything from Robert or me, even when they faced their own financial challenges after Bradley was briefly laid off 3 years ago. I thought about my grandchildren, all 5 of them precious beyond measure. What lesson would I be teaching them if I gave in to Marcus's demands? That bullying and intimidation are acceptable ways to get what you want? That family relationships can be leveraged for financial gain? And I thought about myself, about the remaining years of my life. I was 67, in good health but aware that I might need my savings for medical care as I aged. The money Robert had so carefully invested was meant to keep me secure and independent, not to fund an extravagant lifestyle for my adult son and his wife. As dawn broke, casting long shadows across the living room, I made my decision. I would not buy the house for Marcus and Brianna. I would not reward my son's appalling behavior with financial support. I would not enable the entitlement that had clearly taken root in both of them. It was perhaps the hardest decision I'd ever made as a mother. Harder than letting him cry it out as a baby when all I wanted was to comfort him. Harder than letting him make his own mistakes as a teenager when I could see the pitfalls ahead. Harder than watching him marry a woman I had doubts about, keeping those doubts to myself because it was his life to live. This decision might cost me my relationship with my son. It might limit my access to 2 of my beloved grandchildren. It might cause a permanent rift in our family. But as the new day's light filled the room, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first. And somehow, I knew Robert would approve. The phone rang at 7:30 the next morning. It was Audrey, her voice thick with concern. "Mom? Did you sleep at all? How are you feeling?" "I'm okay," I assured her, though my eyes were gritty from crying and lack of sleep. "A little tired, but okay." "What Marcus did was inexcusable," Audrey said firmly. "Bradley wanted to go after him, but I told him to stay with the kids." "Mom, you know this isn't your fault, right?" I sighed, cradling the phone against my shoulder as I poured myself a cup of coffee. I keep wondering if I did something wrong. If I somehow failed him as a mother. "Absolutely not." Audrey's voice was fierce. "You and Dad were amazing parents. Marcus is a grown man making his own choices. Bad choices influenced by Brianna, but still his responsibility." As we talked, my phone beeped with incoming messages. Marcus had sent 5 texts overnight, ranging from angry, "You've always favored Audrey," to manipulative, "The kids are heartbroken that Grandma doesn't love them enough to help," to guilt-inducing, "Dad would be so disappointed in you right now." There were 3 voicemails as well, which I couldn't bring myself to listen to yet. "He's texting me," I told Audrey, "and leaving voicemails." "Don't respond yet," she advised. "Give yourself time to process everything. And Mom? Bradley and I support whatever decision you make, but please don't give in just to keep the peace. That's not a peace worth keeping." After we hung up, I forced myself to eat some toast and get dressed. I had an appointment with Harold, my financial advisor, that afternoon. It hadn't been planned. I'd called his emergency line that morning, needing professional reassurance that my decision made financial sense. Before heading out, I made the mistake of checking Facebook. Brianna had posted a long self-pitying status about toxic family members who pretend to care but refuse to help when it really matters. She didn't name me directly, but her friends' comments made it clear who she was talking about, with responses like, "Some people just can't bear to part with their money, even for their own grandchildren, and so sad when the older generation doesn't support the younger one." The unfairness of it stung. I had supported both my children in countless ways, financial and otherwise. To be painted as a selfish miser hurt deeply. Harold's office was a welcome respite from my swirling thoughts. He reviewed my financial situation with the same careful attention he'd always shown. "Eleanor," he said gently after I'd explained the situation, "even if you wanted to buy this house for your son, I would strongly advise against it. Your savings are healthy but not unlimited. You're in good shape for retirement because you've been prudent, but purchasing a house of that value would significantly impact your financial security." "What about a loan?" I asked, still seeking some middle ground. Could I loan them money for a larger down payment? Harold removed his glasses, polishing them thoughtfully. "Based on what you've told me about previous loans that weren't repaid, I would consider any money given to your son as a gift, not a loan. And it's a gift you simply cannot afford if you want to maintain your independence as you age." His professional assessment reinforced my decision. But the drive home still felt heavy with sadness. This wasn't how I had imagined my relationship with my son would be at this stage of life. I had just settled in with a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. Through the sidelight, I could see Marcus standing on the porch, alone. My heart leapt with hope that he had come to apologize, but his rigid posture suggested otherwise. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Marcus." "Mom." His voice was tight. "Have you thought about what we discussed yesterday? If by discussed you mean your demand that I buy you and Brianna an $870,000 house, then yes, I've thought about it." I kept my voice level though my heart was racing. "The answer is no." His face flushed. "You don't even want to consider it? To look at the property or talk about options?" "I've talked to Harold," I said, referring to the financial advisor Marcus knew well, as he had been Robert's advisor before mine. "It's not financially responsible for me to make that kind of purchase." "Harold," Marcus scoffed. "That old dinosaur is too conservative. There are plenty of financial planners who would tell you this is a good investment. It's not just about the investment potential," I explained. "It's about my long-term security and independence." Marcus's expression hardened. "It's about your selfishness. You'd rather hoard Dad's money than help your own son. That's unfair, Marcus. Your father and I worked for decades to build our savings. We've helped you many times over the years. Not when it really counted." His voice rose. "Not when we had a chance to give the kids the life they deserve." I felt my resolve strengthening. "Your children have a wonderful life. They have parents who love them, a safe home, good schools, and every advantage. What they don't need is an $870,000 house that their parents can't afford." "Can't afford because you won't help." Marcus was shouting now, attracting the attention of my neighbor across the street, who paused while retrieving her mail. "I'm not having this conversation while you're shouting on my front porch," I said firmly. "When you're ready to discuss this calmly and respectfully, we can talk. Until then, I think you should leave." "Fine," he snapped. "But don't expect to see your grandchildren anytime soon. Brianna doesn't want them around someone who cares so little about their future." The threat hit me like a physical blow, but I managed to maintain my composure. "That would be very sad for Liam and Grace. I hope you'll reconsider using your children as pawns." As Marcus stormed back to his car, I closed the door and leaned against it, tears flowing freely now. The worst had happened. He was threatening to keep my grandchildren from me, all because I wouldn't buy them a house they didn't need and couldn't afford on their own. Over the next week, the situation deteriorated further. Brianna's social media campaign against me intensified, with vague posts about elder abuse claiming I was mentally declining and making irrational financial decisions. Marcus called Audrey, trying to convince her to take his side, but my daughter remained steadfast in her support of me. Some extended family members began calling, concerned about the rumors they were hearing. My cousin Jane suggested I just give Marcus what he wants to keep the peace. My nephew Thomas questioned whether I was being fair to Marcus, given that Audrey's husband comes from money. It seemed everyone had an opinion about how I should spend my savings. Patricia, bless her, arrived for an unexpected visit, announcing she would stay until this nonsense is sorted out. Having my older sister there was a comfort I hadn't known I needed. She fielded phone calls, deleted Brianna's Facebook friend request, and made sure I ate regular meals when my appetite disappeared under the stress. "You know you're doing the right thing," she reminded me each time I wavered. "This isn't about the money. It's about respect and boundaries." She was right, but that didn't ease the pain of missing Liam and Grace. 2 weeks passed with no contact. I missed Grace's dance recital, something I had been looking forward to for months. According to Audrey, who still took her children for playdates with their cousins, Liam had asked why they couldn't see Grandma anymore, and Brianna had told him Grandma is being mean to Daddy. The isolation was taking its toll. I found myself avoiding my regular bridge game, unable to face the inevitable questions about my family. I skipped church 2 Sundays in a row, not wanting to explain my red-rimmed eyes to well-meaning friends. I felt as though I was grieving, in a way. Grieving the loss of the relationship I thought I had with my son, grieving the distance from my grandchildren, grieving the peaceful family I had worked so hard to nurture. Late at night, when Patricia was asleep in the guest room, I would sometimes question my decision. Was a principle worth this much pain? Was standing my ground worth losing my son? But then I would remember the look in Marcus's eyes as he pushed me, the entitlement in his voice as he demanded I sell my home. And I knew that giving in would only lead to more demands, more disrespect, more pain down the road. So I stood firm, even as the weeks stretched into a month of silence from Marcus and Brianna. I sent cards to Liam and Grace, unsure if they would receive them. I continued my weekly dinners with Audrey and her family, grateful for their unwavering support, but aware of the empty chairs where Marcus and his family should have been. And I waited, hoping that time would bring perspective to my son, but preparing myself for the possibility that our relationship might never be the same again. 3 months passed with no word from Marcus beyond terse texts about why Liam and Grace couldn't attend family gatherings. Grace has a cold. Liam has soccer practice. We have other plans. I sent birthday gifts for Liam that went unacknowledged. I left voicemails that weren't returned. The pain dulled somewhat with time, but never disappeared entirely. I threw myself into volunteer work at the local literacy center, spending hours helping adults learn to read. The focus required kept my mind from dwelling on family troubles, and the gratitude of my students was a balm to my wounded heart. Patricia had returned to her home in Oregon, but we spoke daily, her unwavering support a lifeline during the darkest moments. Audrey stopped by one Tuesday evening in June, unusually without Bradley or the children. Her expression was serious as she accepted a glass of iced tea and settled onto the patio chair across from me. "Mom, there's something you should know," she began hesitantly. "I wasn't sure whether to tell you, but I think you have a right to know." My heart clenched. "Is it the children? Are Liam and Grace okay?" "They're fine," she quickly assured me. "It's Marcus and Brianna. They're having problems. Serious problems." I set down my glass carefully. "What kind of problems?" Audrey sighed. "Financial for one thing. Bradley ran into Marcus's friend Jacob at the gym, and apparently Marcus confided that they're struggling to keep up with their current mortgage and home equity loan payments. Brianna keeps spending despite Marcus asking her to cut back." "That doesn't surprise me," I admitted. "But why the sudden crisis? They've been living beyond their means for years." "That's the other part," Audrey said, leaning forward. "According to Jacob, Brianna has been pushing Marcus about money for their entire marriage. The house demand was her idea, of course, but it goes deeper than that. Jacob said Marcus admitted that Brianna has significant credit card debt she's been hiding from him. Tens of thousands of dollars. The revelation wasn't entirely shocking. Brianna's shopping habits had always seemed excessive compared to their income. But the scale of the deception was disturbing. "Poor Marcus," I murmured, maternal instinct overriding my hurt feelings. "He must be devastated." "There's more," Audrey continued reluctantly. Jacob said Marcus is starting to see how Brianna has been manipulating him, turning him against you and pushing him to ask for money. He's embarrassed and ashamed, especially about what happened at dinner that night. Hope flickered in my chest, quickly tempered by caution. Has he said anything to you directly? No, Audrey admitted. But I wanted you to know that things might not be as black and white as they seemed. Marcus might be starting to see the light. I nodded, processing this new information. Thank you for telling me. I won't reach out to him yet. He needs to come to his own conclusions in his own time. A week later, my phone rang at 11:30 at night. I fumbled for it in the darkness, heart racing with the fear that comes from late-night calls. Hello. I answered breathlessly. Mom. Marcus's voice was rough, as though he'd been crying. I'm sorry to call so late. Did I wake you? It's okay, I said, sitting up and turning on the bedside lamp. Is everything all right? Are the children okay? The kids are fine, he assured me. They're asleep. I needed to talk to you. The vulnerability in his voice made my throat tighten. I'm listening, Marcus. There was a long pause, then a shaky breath. I messed up, Mom. I messed up so badly. The things I said to you, the way I acted. I can't believe I put my hands on you. I've never been so ashamed of myself. Tears welled in my eyes. Oh, Marcus. I don't expect you to forgive me, he continued, voice breaking. I wouldn't forgive me, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. So deeply sorry. What brought this on? I asked gently, not wanting to break the fragile moment but needing to understand. Another long pause. A lot of things. Seeing how Brianna talked about you on social media. Watching Liam cry because he missed his grandma. Realizing how manipulated I've been. His voice hardened slightly. Finding out Brianna's been hiding things from me. Important things. Do you want to talk about it? I offered. Not tonight. Maybe we could meet for coffee? Just you and me. I'd like that very much, I said, hope blooming in my chest. Tomorrow morning? Tomorrow morning, he agreed. The cafe on Maple at 9? And Mom? Thank you for picking up. I wouldn't have blamed you if you hadn't. We met at the small cafe where we used to have breakfast occasionally when Marcus worked nearby. He was already there when I arrived, looking tired and thinner than I remembered. He stood when he saw me, uncertainty in his eyes until I opened my arms for a hug. He clung to me for a moment like he used to do as a little boy after a nightmare. Over coffee, Marcus opened up about the past 3 months. About discovering that Brianna had 3 secret credit cards with balances totaling over $40,000. About the arguments that followed. Brianna's defensiveness turning to accusations that Marcus wasn't providing well enough for her. About her increasingly erratic behavior. Disappearing for hours without explanation. I hired a private investigator, Marcus admitted, staring into his coffee cup. I know it sounds extreme, but something didn't add up. Her explanations for where the money went, where she was spending her time. None of it made sense. My stomach knotted with dread. What did you find out? Marcus looked up, eyes hollow with pain. She's been having an affair. For over a year. With her regional sales director. The money went to hotels, expensive gifts for him. Even a weekend trip to Napa Valley, while I thought she was at a sales conference. Oh, Marcus. I reached across the table to squeeze his hand. I'm so sorry. The worst part, he continued, voice dropping to almost a whisper, is that I'm not even surprised. Looking back, there were so many signs. But I was so desperate to make her happy, to be enough for her, that I ignored every red flag. We all have blind spots when it comes to the people we love, I said gently. Love? Marcus gave a bitter laugh. I'm not sure what I feel for Brianna anymore, but it isn't love. Maybe it hasn't been for a long time. We talked for nearly 2 hours, the conversation flowing more easily as time passed. Marcus asked about Audrey and her family, about my volunteer work, about Patricia's visit. He spoke of his children with tender concern, worried about how they would cope with the inevitable changes coming to their family. I'm not sure what happens next, he admitted as we prepared to leave. Brianna doesn't know that I know about the affair. I need to consult with a lawyer before I confront her. But I wanted to make things right with you first, Mom. As right as they can be anyway. Do you need money for a lawyer? I offered, understanding this was a genuine need, not an entitled demand. Marcus shook his head firmly.
No.
This is my mess to sort out. I've relied on you and Dad financially for too long. It's time I stood on my own feet. As we parted outside the cafe, Marcus hugged me again. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said softly. You have it anyway, I assured him. That's what mothers do. But Marcus. I pulled back to look him in the eye. While I forgive you, I need you to understand that there are boundaries I won't allow to be crossed again. I won't be spoken to disrespectfully, I won't be manipulated, and I certainly won't be pushed. Those are non-negotiable. I understand, he said solemnly, and I respect that. I promise I'll do better. I believed him. For the first time in years, I was seeing glimpses of the son I had raised, the man his father had hoped he would become. The road ahead wouldn't be easy for him, but at least we were walking in the same direction again. 2 weeks after our coffee meeting, Marcus moved into Audrey and Bradley's guest house, a small but comfortable space behind their main home. Brianna had reacted explosively when confronted with evidence of her affair, alternating between tearful apologies and vicious accusations. For the children's sake, Marcus had chosen to be the one to leave the family home temporarily while they began divorce proceedings. I suggested he stay with me, but he declined gently. I need some space to figure out who I am without Brianna's influence, he explained. And I think we need to rebuild our relationship gradually, Mom. I don't want to rush back to dependence. I respected his decision, recognizing the wisdom in it. Instead of offering housing, I helped in other ways. I researched therapists specializing in divorce and betrayal trauma, eventually finding Dr. Renata Mills, whose approach resonated with Marcus. He began weekly sessions, sometimes emerging red-eyed but always standing a little straighter, a little more like his true self. A month after Marcus moved out, I hosted another family dinner. This one was markedly different from the disastrous meal that had started our rift. Just Audrey's family, Marcus, and myself.
No Brianne. No tensión simmering beneath polite conversation.
No undercurrents of resentment or manipulation. The conversation was subdued compared to our gatherings of the past, but there was an honesty to it that felt refreshing. Marcus spoke openly about his therapy, about his struggles to establish a new co-parenting relationship with Brianna, about his fear of the impact the divorce would have on Liam and Grace. Dr. Mills says children are resilient if they feel secure in their parents' love, he explained, helping me clear plates while Audrey supervised the children in the living room. I'm trying to focus on that, on making sure they know that both Brianna and I love them, even if we can't live together anymore. That's wise, I agreed. Your father and I always believed that children need security more than perfection. Marcus paused, dishes in hand. You and Dad had such a strong marriage. I wanted that so badly with Brianna, but I think I was chasing a fantasy from the beginning. We never had what you two had. Your father and I worked at our marriage every day, I told him gently. It wasn't perfect. We had our struggles, but we faced them as a team, not as adversaries. As the weeks passed, Marcus slowly revealed more about the toxic dynamics in his marriage to Brianna. How she would withdraw affection if he didn't comply with her wishes. How she would compare him unfavorably to her friends' husbands, particularly regarding income and material possessions. How she would remind him that she could have married her college boyfriend, now a successful surgeon, whenever Marcus expressed concerns about their spending. I let her define my worth, Marcus admitted during one of our now regular coffee meetings. I thought if I could just earn more by more be more, she would finally be happy. But the target kept moving. Brianna wasn't taking the separation quietly. She called mutual friends with her version of events, portraying herself as the victim of Marcus's unreasonable expectations and controlling behavior. She tried to limit Marcus's time with the children, claiming he was unstable and angry. She demanded financial support far beyond what Marcus could reasonably provide, threatening to tell the children it was their father's fault they couldn't maintain their lifestyle if he didn't comply. The worst part, Marcus told me, frustration evident in his voice, is that she's turning family friends against me. People we've known for years suddenly won't return my calls. She's always been good at playing the victim. I recognized the painful irony. For years, Brianna had gradually isolated Marcus from friends and family, who might have offered perspective on her manipulation. Now she was using the same tactics to shape the narrative around their separation. Seeking support for myself through this challenging time, I joined a support group for parents of adult children going through divorce. The Parents Weathering the Storm group met weekly at the community center, and I was surprised to discover how many others were facing similar situations. My daughter's husband cleaned out their accounts before filing for divorce, shared Linda, a soft-spoken woman in her 70s. Now she and my grandchildren are living in my basement apartment while she tries to rebuild her life. I want to help, but I'm on a fixed income myself. My son's ex turned my grandchildren against me, Gerald, a retired postal worker, said bitterly. Told them I had said terrible things about their mother, which I never did. I haven't seen them in 3 years. Their stories helped me gain perspective. As painful as our family situation was, I could see how much worse it might have been. Marcus was actively working on himself, prioritizing his children's well-being, and rebuilding our relationship with honesty and respect. Many in the group weren't so fortunate. The support group also helped me develop strategies for supporting Marcus without enabling unhealthy patterns. When he mentioned struggling with meal preparation for the children during his parenting time, instead of offering to cook everything myself, I suggested we have cooking lessons together. We spent Sunday afternoons preparing simple meals he could recreate easily, teaching Liam and Grace basic kitchen skills in the process. When Marcus expressed anxiety about managing his finances as a single father, I resisted the urge to simply write a check. Instead, I connected him with a financial counselor who specialized in post-divorce budgeting. I offered to watch the children while he attended the sessions, providing support without taking over. "You're different, Mom," Marcus observed one evening as we sat on my patio, watching the sunset after the children had gone inside with Audrey to make ice cream sundaes. "You're still helping me, but it's not the same as before." "How so?" I asked, curious about his perception. "Before, I think you helped because you felt you had to, because that's what mothers do. And maybe because you felt guilty saying no." He looked at me directly. "Now you help in ways that actually make me stronger, not more dependent. I'm grateful for that." His insight touched me deeply. He was right. For years, I had given financial help out of a sense of obligation, often against my better judgment, and usually with a knot of resentment in my stomach. Now I was finding ways to support that honored both his needs and my boundaries. It was a healthier dynamic for both of us. The first major holiday after the separation tested our new family equilibrium. Thanksgiving had always been a big event in our home, with extended family and friends gathering around tables that stretched from the dining room into the living room. This year, with the divorce proceedings still ongoing and tensions high, we opted for a smaller celebration. Just Audrey's family, Marcus and his children, Patricia who flew in from Oregon, and myself. Brianna had initially tried to prevent Marcus from having the children for Thanksgiving, but their temporary custody agreement gave him the holiday this year. She sent them with new tablets, clearly attempting to distract them from engaging with the family gathering. Her strategy failed. After about 30 minutes of game playing, both children set the devices aside in favor of helping roll out pie crusts and playing board games with their cousins. As we gathered around the table, I looked at my family with a full heart. We were smaller in number than in previous years, but somehow larger in spirit. There was an authenticity to our interaction that had been missing when we were all walking on eggshells around Brianna's moods and Marcus's enabling behavior. When Marcus offered to say grace, his words brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for second chances," he said simply, "for the opportunity to rebuild what was broken, for family who love us at our worst and help us become our best, and for the wisdom to recognize the true blessings in our lives, which have nothing to do with houses or possessions, and everything to do with the people gathered at this table." Looking at my son across the table, I saw a man emerging from a long shadow into his own light. The journey wasn't over for any of us. There would be more difficult days ahead as the divorce progressed, as the children adjusted, as new family patterns established themselves. But for the first time in years, I felt genuine hope for Marcus's future, and for our relationship as mother and son. 1 year after that fateful Sunday dinner when Marcus demanded I buy him and Brianna an $870,000 house, our family landscape had transformed completely. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago, with Marcus receiving joint custody of the children. Brianna had been forced to sell the family home, as neither of them could afford it individually. She now lived in a luxury apartment near her workplace, while Marcus had purchased a modest 3-bedroom townhouse within the same school district as the children. The townhouse was a sensible choice, well within his budget as a software developer. I had offered to help with the down payment, a genuine offer made from love rather than obligation, but Marcus declined. "I need to do this on my own, Mom," he explained, "for my own self-respect." I respected his decision and found other ways to support his fresh start. I helped him furnish the children's rooms, finding quality second-hand furniture we refinished together. I taught him how to tend a small container garden on his patio, growing herbs and cherry tomatoes that Liam and Grace delighted in harvesting. And most importantly, I continued our Sunday cooking lessons, which had expanded to include budget planning and household management skills that Robert had handled during our marriage. "Dad would be proud of you," I told Marcus one Sunday as we prepared a week's worth of meals that he could freeze and reheat. "Not just for learning to cook, but for everything. For taking responsibility. For putting your children first. For becoming the man he always knew you could be." Marcus's eyes glistened. I think about him a lot these days, wondering what advice he would give me, hoping I'm making choices he would approve of. "You are," I assured him. "Every day you are." The relationship between Marcus and Brianna remained strained, but they had established workable communication for the sake of the children. Brianna had initially tried to poison the children against Marcus and me, telling them their reduced circumstances were our fault. But children are perceptive. They noticed that while their father lived modestly and spent quality time with them, their mother continued to buy expensive clothes and jewelry while complaining about financial struggles. "Mommy got another new purse," Grace informed me during one visit, her 7-year-old eyes serious. "She said she needed it for work, but it looks just like her other red purse." I was careful never to criticize Brianna in front of the children. "Your mommy has her own money to spend as she chooses," I replied neutrally. "Just like you get to decide how to spend your allowance." As Marcus established his independence, I found myself reflecting on the lessons of the past year. I realized that what had initially seemed like a crisis had actually been an opportunity for growth and healing. By refusing to buy that house, I had set in motion a chain of events that ultimately freed my son from a toxic relationship and restored our bond as mother and son. I shared these thoughts with my support group, which I continued to attend even as our family situation improved. "I never thought I'd say this," I told them, "but I'm grateful for that terrible dinner. If Marcus hadn't pushed me that night, if I hadn't been forced to take a stand, we might have continued in that unhealthy pattern for years." Linda, who had become a close friend, nodded in understanding. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our adult children is to say no. It's just so hard to remember that in the moment. The wisdom I gained through this experience wasn't just about setting financial boundaries, though that was important. It was about recognizing that true generosity isn't always giving people what they want. Sometimes it's giving them what they need, which might be limits, consequences, and the space to find their own way. Marcus seemed to have internalized this lesson as well. When Liam begged for an expensive gaming system that all his friends had, Marcus sat him down for a thoughtful conversation about wants versus needs, and the value of delayed gratification. They created a chart where Liam could track chores and savings toward his goal. I watched with pride as my son passed on the values his father had taught him, values that had been temporarily overshadowed during his marriage to Brianna but never truly forgotten. Brianna continued her attempts at manipulation, but they became less effective as time passed. She would call Marcus with emergencies that required his immediate attention, only to reveal trivial issues when he arrived. She would schedule activities for the children during his parenting time, then make him the bad guy when he enforced the custody agreement. She would promise the children extravagant gifts or trips, then claim she couldn't follow through because Daddy doesn't pay enough support. But Marcus had developed stronger boundaries. He no longer jumped at her commands or accepted blame for her choices. He documented everything, communicated in writing when possible, and focused on being consistent and reliable for Liam and Grace. Gradually, Brianna's power over him diminished, until her manipulations became more annoying than devastating. Our family found new traditions to replace the old ones. Instead of elaborate holiday celebrations focused on expensive gifts, we emphasized experiences and quality time. For Christmas, each person created a handmade gift and planned an activity to share with the family. Audrey's family taught us all to make snow globes. Bradley organized a neighborhood caroling expedition. Marcus set up a hot chocolate bar with homemade marshmallows. The children performed a play they had written themselves. And I shared my mother's recipe for Swedish cardamom bread, teaching all the grandchildren to knead and braid the dough. The resulting holiday was simpler than those of the past but somehow more meaningful. I watched my grandchildren laughing together. Cousins bonded by love and shared experiences rather than material possessions. I saw my children supporting each other, Audrey and Marcus rebuilding the close sibling relationship they had enjoyed before Brianna came between them. And I felt Robert's presence in the values being lived and passed down to the next generation. My relationship with Marcus had fundamentally changed. Where once there had been dependency and unspoken resentment, there was now mutual respect and authentic connection. We could disagree without fear of rejection. We could discuss difficult topics without manipulation tactics. We could enjoy each other's company as the adults we both were, rather than locked in outdated patterns of parent and child. You know, Marcus mused during one of our coffee dates, I used to think being a good son meant making you happy, whatever that took. And being a good husband meant making Brianna happy, whatever that took. I never considered that my own integrity should be the foundation for both relationships. That's a profound insight, I told him. One many people never reach. I had a good teacher, he said, squeezing my hand across the table. Two good teachers, actually. You and Dad. As I reflect on this journey from my quiet living room, the same room where Marcus once pushed me against the wall in anger, I'm filled with gratitude for the difficult path we've traveled. Standing firm in that moment cost me dearly in the short term, but the long-term benefits have been immeasurable. If Robert were here, I think he would approve of how things have unfolded. He always believed in natural consequences as the best teacher. He valued integrity over convenience and character over comfort. And above all, he believed that love sometimes means making hard choices for the right reasons. To those facing similar challenges with adult children, I would offer this hard-won wisdom. Setting boundaries isn't rejection. It's respect for both yourself and the other person. Financial generosity without personal responsibility creates dependency, not growth. And sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is to allow their adult child to experience the consequences of their own choices. The house that Marcus and Brianna demanded would have cost me $870,000. By refusing to buy it, I lost months with my grandchildren, endured painful family conflict, and weathered the storm of Brianna's vindictive behavior. But what I gained was beyond price. A son who rediscovered his integrity, grandchildren who are learning the value of character over possessions, and the peace that comes from knowing I honored both my husband's legacy and my own principles. Some might call it tough love. I simply call it love, in its most genuine and enduring form. The kind of love that shapes character, builds resilience, and ultimately sets people free to become their best selves. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision regarding family and money? What boundaries have you established with loved ones, and how did it affect your relationships? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to make the right choices in your own relationships, even when they're the hardest ones to make.